Thank you. This is the Committee on Law and Government. We have attained a quorum with Vice Chair Councilman Green, Councilwoman Sanchez appointed to the committee this morning, and Council President Clark. Ms. Marconi, will you please read the title of the bill before us today, please?
Bill number 190607, an ordinance amending Chapter 9-1100 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fair Practices Ordinance, Protections Against Unlawful Discrimination, amending Chapter 9-4100 entitled Promoting Healthy Families and Workplaces, and adding a new chapter entitled Protections for Domestic Workers, all to provide protections for domestic workers and to establish remedial and enforcement provisions under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. And I guess I should have mentioned my name. I'm Bill Greenlee. Ms. Marconi, please announce the first witness, please.
Amanda Shimko, Manager, Office of Benefits and Wage Compliance, Mayor's Office of Labor.
And while Ms. Shimko is coming forward, just for everybody, most of you, we have your written testimony, those of you who have asked to testify. In fairness, most of it is not that long, but we'd appreciate, because we're already running behind a little bit, we have another resolution to take up through this committee, and then we have a whole nother committee hearing after that. So if you have written testimony, the full testimony will be made part of the record, and if you could summarize that, that would be to everybody's advantage. We appreciate it. Councilwoman, before you testify, Councilwoman Sanchez.
Thank you. Good morning, and I want to thank the members of the Committee on Law and Government. This spring, we began a public discussion about domestic workers in the city of Philadelphia. I want to thank the Pennsylvania Domestic Workers Alliance, Community Legal Services, the Law Department, and the administration represented by Amanda, who you will hear from. What we're attempting to do is set in motion an important process, a process where workers and the employers and the workers can sit at a table and we can begin to educate folks around the value of this particular sector in our society. I want to thank the administration and the Office of the Department of Labor, who worked with us through the summer as we attempted to not only pass legislation, but operationalize it in a way that could provide massive education and information to all those involved. So I look forward to this public conversation. I look forward to passing this bill. And more importantly, I look forward to working with employers and the workers in this industry as we provide them with more money, obviously being important, but workforce protections and really elevate this sector in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you to all those who've participated.
And Councilwoman, kudos to you for the leadership you provided in this. This is obviously an important issue. Ms. Shimko, just 1 second. I understand we're setting something up for, we done? 1 second. Okay. 1 second's up. No, it's all right. Okay. Hello. We ready? Okay. Okay. All right. Ms. Shimko, please. Please identify yourself and proceed. A little closer to the microphone, please. Is it on?
Good morning, members of the Committee on Law and Government. I'm Amanda Shimko, the manager of the Office of Benefits and Wage Compliance in the Mayor's Office of Labor. I'm here today representing the administration. I'd first like to acknowledge all of the hard work that went into crafting these amendments by Councilmember Quinona Sanchez and her staff. Also, the City Law Department, Community Legal Services, the Pennsylvania Domestic Workers Alliance, the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and the many domestic workers who met weekly for nearly 2 hours for 3 months. This legislation reflects real input from the workers who need these protections, as well as valuable guidance from the groups who work every day to help workers in this city, state, and nationally. We are impressed by the work that went into this bill and support it in its amended form. Bill number 190607 will provide the necessary protections to workers in this city who are doing the very important work of caring for our children, our sick, our elderly, and the hard work of tending to our homes. For far too long, this group of workers has been left behind and even carved out of labor protections. The proposed legislation will change that in Philadelphia. As amended, Bill number 190607 will provide basic protections that all domestic workers deserve, such as the right to privacy, the right to a contract, the right to unpaid sick leave, and the right to paid time off. These protections are necessary for many reasons. The right to privacy will help foster the dignity every person in the city deserves by prohibiting the filming of domestic workers while using the bathroom or changing in their private quarters. The right to privacy also prohibits the hiring entity from holding on to the original documents of a worker, which could leave the worker vulnerable with very few places to turn to for help. A contract helps to professionalize the work, providing both the worker and the service user with clear expectations and responsibilities. Currently, domestic workers, who are often misclassified as independent contractors, are excluded from our sick leave protections and are vulnerable to being fired for having to attend a doctor's appointment or being too sick to clean a home. This will protect their jobs and allow them to take care of themselves and their families. And finally, the legislation guarantees the right to paid time away from work, allowing domestic workers who have told us the tragic stories of missing their child's high school graduation because they couldn't afford to miss hours of work, the benefit of earning up to 40 hours of paid leave per year. Additionally, this legislation authorizes the Mayor's Office of Labor to oversee the creation of a portable benefits system that will provide domestic workers access to paid time off. This system will be groundbreaking for domestic workers and also the first of its kind in the country. The Office of Benefits and Wage Compliance within the Mayor's Office of Labor works to enforce the city's labor protections. In the last year, we've been making essential improvements by staffing up and laying the groundwork necessary to accommodate additional enforcement responsibilities. We recognize, however, that should this legislation become law, it would be slightly different than our other charges, and therefore our approach would be to provide education and assistance to service users who likely haven't seen themselves as employers in the past. We support the efforts of City Council to provide protections for our city's domestic workers. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Mayor's Office of Labor for all you've done in working this out. And I see the Deputy Mayor over there, Deputy Mayor Laser. Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Okay. Starting off smoothly here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Marconi, our next panel, please.
Nicole Klingerman, Pat Eiding, and Nadia Huka.
The record will reflect the Mayor's Office got a round of applause today, so just... Please, whoever would like to get, Nicole, if you want to go first, or Pat? Okay, please. Mr. Eiding, please.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me this time. My name is Pat Eiding. I do represent 150,000 working families here in Philadelphia as president of the Philadelphia Council AFL-CIO. And let me say up front, my mantra is that anybody who's working should have the right to representation, fair wages, and benefits. So you know where we are and where we represent. You have a letter that I sent on behalf of the council.
Yes.
If you would bear with me, I'm going to read one paragraph. I think it tells our feelings and where we stand. Organized labor is the backbone of this city, and while domestic workers are federally prohibited from unionization, unions and their supporters must stand with the hardworking men and women who care for homes and loved ones. All workers, regardless of the job they do, deserve safety protections, fairness, and a voice on the job. Only by rectifying their exclusion from the labor protections and raising standards can these marginalized workers have the protections they deserve. This includes meal and rest breaks, written contracts, inclusion into the Fair Practices Ordinance, protection from retaliation, including around immigration status, and paid time off when they are sick or to be with their families. Philadelphia now has the opportunity to once again take leadership to protect working families in our city. We must join the 10 states and cities of Seattle by passing this legislation and to enshrine into law and the inherent right to safe and dignified working conditions for domestic workers. Domestic workers are workers, pure and clear. They probably are put upon by more than anybody else. I put them with hotel workers in some cases, where they're treated unfair and sometimes put upon. I have to tell you that organized labor stands very strongly for this piece of legislation. We will support it in any way we can, and we'd love to follow it up once this legislation is passed to help to make sure these folks are treated fairly, and again, have protection and fair wages and a right to some benefits. So that's where we stand as the Philadelphia Council. That's where we represent over 100 unions in this city, and we stand strongly to help you pass this ordinance.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And obviously, thank you for all the work you do for the working people of the city. Before our next speaker, please let the record reflect Councilman O, a member of the committee, is present. Nicole, you'd like to go next?
Sure.
And we'll hear from all three, and then if there's any questions.
Good morning, members of the Committee on Law and Government. My name is Nicole Kligerman, and I'm the director of the Pennsylvania Domestic Workers Alliance, where we organize nannies, caregivers, and house cleaners to make rights and respect a reality for Philadelphia's 16,000 domestic workers. We are also a chapter of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, the leading voice for this country's 2.5 million domestic workers. Thank you for the opportunity today to hold this historic hearing and vote to extend workplace protections, safety, and dignity to some of the most important and most marginalized workers in our city. I especially want to thank our council sponsors here today, including Councilmember Quinona Sanchez and Councilmember Greenlee, as well as Mayor Kenny's administration for their support. I am a fifth-generation Philadelphian and, like everyone else in this room, am here today because I believe this city can and must protect and uplift all of its residents, regardless of where they live, what language they speak, where they come from, or what job they do. I know we are all tired of repeating this statistic that our city is the poorest major city in the country. We will not be able to lose this terrible distinction until we ensure an end to the unjust working conditions for the most invisibilized working people in our city. Domestic workers do the work that makes all other work possible, allowing their employers to go to their jobs with the peace of mind that their children or elderly parents and homes are safe. Domestic workers are not afforded that same peace of mind. Since the New Deal era labor laws were passed, domestic workers have been systematically excluded from almost all local, state, and federal labor protections. These exclusions are rooted in a legacy of slavery and racism. Domestic workers are still included from almost all basic protections, including the ability to form a union. And today, you have the opportunity to change this terrible legacy and make Philadelphia the largest city in the country to take a stand for domestic workers. In Philadelphia, the vast majority of our city's 16,000 domestic workers are Black and brown women, many of whom are undocumented, and are still not afforded the economic stability, safety, and dignity at work simply because of the kind of work they do. They make an average of $10,000 a year, and as you will hear later, face widespread wage theft, abuse, lack of job security, and persistent mistreatment, and have very little recourse. The combined impact of the lack of labor protections and systematically marginalized identities of domestic workers and the nature of working individually behind closed doors in a private residence demands action and support from city government. The Philadelphia Domestic Workers Bill of Rights before you today will be a game changer for domestic workers and for our city. As it stands, this will be one of the strongest pieces of legislation of its kind in the country. In other localities where such bills have been won, we have seen a dramatic improvement in working conditions. Domestic work is increasingly seen and treated as real work, and workers are better able to care for their own families and have a voice on the job. It's time for Philadelphia to join and lead this national movement. Thank you for your time, and I urge you to vote yes to pass the Philadelphia Domestic Worker Bill of Rights.
Thank you. Please.
Good morning, council members. My name is Nadia Hevka from Community Legal Services. I thank you so much for considering these amendments to the legislation. And I just want to say that the This moment is possible because of the work that people in this chamber have done, organizing domestic workers to stand up for these really important basic rights from which they're currently excluded, as well as the history of this council in taking bold action to protect low-wage workers in Philadelphia, by which, through your efforts, this new office has been created in the city, and they have been a partner in these negotiations and crafting the language. So I want to just acknowledge the folks that are about to testify after me, who are the ones that really have so much at stake today. And thank you for your questions and your concerns about this. As Nicole mentioned, this workforce has been excluded from a lot of our labor laws, and that's why we're here today, to do what we can on a local level to try to protect some of these vulnerable workers who are engaged and strong and standing up to make these jobs better jobs. So through this collaborative process over the summer with us, with the workers present at every meeting, with the law department, we've created the legislation that's before you, and we are careful to avoid any issues with preemption. I know that's one of the concerns that people have. So because we are not raising this minimum wage or extending paid overtime protections, which might cause preemption issues. Instead, we're focused on what the city can do for workers. First, the bill prohibits discrimination in hiring and firing of domestic workers, getting rid of a historical anachronism in the Fair Practices Law. We are united on this point. No worker should be turned away or fired for her race, gender, sexual orientation, or any other illegal factor, and no category of workers should be written out of these basic protections. The Commission on Human Relations has been consulted on this matter and endorses this change in the law. Next, the bill requires domestic workers to have written contracts with employers that clearly spell out hours, duties, and other important provisions. Why is this important? Our clients routinely get told to take on more and more and end up working extra hours, often for no additional compensation. Knowing your job duties and hours allows you to plan for your own life and allows you to have a more equal relationship with your employer. It also helps us, as the lawyers, figure things out when there is a dispute, such as over hours or pay. This would be an important new right for workers, and we are looking forward to helping spread the word to this workforce. Third, under this law, the worker has the right to take rest and meal breaks. Right now, there is no such requirement, and as a result, many care workers are made to perform this very difficult and draining work around the clock with no breaks. Under this law, workers will get a 30-minute meal break after 5 hours of consecutive on-duty time, and live-in domestic workers can get a day off after 6 consecutive days of work. Again, it's absurd that we don't already have this under state or federal protections, but the fact is that we don't, and this is a really important thing for this workforce. Finally, this bill pioneers an innovative system for paid time off that deals with the realities of domestic workers who work for multiple employers, allowing for portability of benefits so that workers can take time off that they've accumulated across multiple jobs. Hours will be earned at the same rate as the current paid sick leave law, 1 hour for every 40 hours of work. But we are extending this benefit to folks who are essentially gig workers. Domestic workers also get sick. Sometimes they get sick because they are caring for the children of working parents, and many have no health insurance or access to other public benefits or a safety net, so it is very important that they get access to paid time off. Many of the details of this portable benefit system will be worked out by a task force which will include domestic workers and their employers as well as other advocates. This task force will also be a forum for other issues that may arise when enforcing this law, and will work with council and with the Mayor's Office of Labor to make recommendations. Thank you for your time. This is a historic moment, and we hope that you will be voting yes to support this important bill.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, again, thank you for all the work, all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Marconi, I think it's our final panel.
Annie Johnson, Maria Del Carmen, Elena Bauer, and Vanessa Field.
Let me just ask, other than this panel, anyone else here to testify on this bill?
Okay, so we got to get
Okay, very good. This will be our last panel. Whoever would like to go first. Ms. Johnson's name was mentioned first, if you'd like to go first. Okay. Please speak right in the microphone and state your name and proceed, please. We have your written testimony, but however you'd like to proceed. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annie Johnson.
A little closer to Mike. Just pull it up, that's it. This is a hearing room that you can't hear in, so just, there you go.
Hi, my name is
There you
Annie
go.
Johnson. I'm a member of the Philadelphia Domestic Workers Alliance. I am a nanny. I declare that statement with confidence and pride. Pride because the job of a nanny is one of the most important jobs a person can do. I can say with confidence I influence the future. I contribute to the physical, intellectual, emotional, and social development of the children in my care. Every day, 16,000 domestic workers leave their homes to go to various homes throughout Philadelphia to work as nannies, house cleaners, home health aides, and perform other forms of domestic work. I have worked for 18 years as a nanny, first in New York and now here in Philadelphia. I was also an early childhood educator in my home country of Trinidad and Tobago. New York has had its Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights for many years, and as a result, the treatment of domestic workers have improved tremendously in New York. Domestic workers need these improvements in Philadelphia as well. Because of this, we come to City Hall to ask you, members of council, to vote yes to the passing of the Philadelphia Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights. Domestic workers in Philadelphia need it now more than ever. What we are asking for is the right to work in an environment that recognizes the important work and contribution domestic workers make every day. Vote yes to written contracts. A written contract would benefit both employer and employee. It will specify in detail what my job responsibilities, work schedule, pay, and more are. Without a written contract, I can be asked to perform duties I was not hired to do, and refusing can be a reason for termination. Vote yes to paid time off. Years ago, I was feeling very sick but decided to tough it out and headed to my nanny job on public transportation. All of a sudden, I felt very lightheaded and fainted in the subway car. Domestic workers should be able to visit the doctor, take a sick day, attend their children's graduation or even a family's funeral without fear of losing a day's pay or even their job. Vote yes to freedom from discrimination. Employers should not be legally allowed to discriminate against me because I might be gay, black, or an immigrant to this country. You all as members of council are protected from this kind of discrimination when you come to work at City Hall. Every day, we domestic workers should get the same protection. Vote yes to termination notice and severance pay. If someone is terminated without notice, bills still need to be paid, and more often than not, it takes a while to get another job. Vote yes to privacy. Domestic workers should not fear going to the bathroom or being monitored in the room that has been set aside for their use at work. We know this happens, especially to living domestic workers. Vote yes to meal and rest breaks. Some of us have to work without a break or eat while we are working, doing things like changing a diaper, cleaning the house, attending to our clients, performing our duties. After many months of coming to City Hall, we are saying to you, vote yes, Council, for the Philadelphia Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. One second. Please let the record reflect Councilman Gim, member of the committee, is present. Please. Go ahead.
Buenos días, soy María del Carmen Díaz y soy una líder con la Alianza de las Trabajadoras del Hogar en Pensilvania.
Good morning. I'm Maria Del Carmen Diaz, and I'm a leader with the Pennsylvania Domestic Workers Alliance here in Pennsylvania.
Yo vivo en Filadelfia, en el norte, limpio casas, cuido niños, cuido ancianos y tengo 24 años en este trabajo del hogar.
I live in North Philadelphia, and I clean homes and care for children and elderly people. I've worked as a domestic worker for 24 years.
En ese tiempo nunca me han pagado vacaciones ni tiempo de enfermedad y nunca he tenido un contrato por escrito.
I have never received paid vacation or sick time, and I've never had a written contract.
He sufrido discriminación por mi idioma, por mi color, por ser latina.
I've suffered discrimination because of my language, my color, and for being Latina.
He sufrido robo de salario cuando mis patrones se me niegan a pagar.
I've suffered wage theft when employers have refused to pay me.
Trabajo de 6 a 6 todos los días y algunas horas los fines de semana por 25 empleadores.
I work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and several more hours on Saturdays and Sundays, and I work for 25 different employers.
Lucho por la Carta de Derechos para tener derechos legales por la primera vez.
I'm fighting for the Bill of Rights to have legal rights for the first time.
Para acabar con estos abusos, como trabajadoras del hogar, todas trabajamos juntas en escribir las provisiones de la ley para asegurar que reflejen nuestras necesidades.
Because it's time to stop with these abuses. As domestic workers, we all worked on the provisions in the bill to make sure that they reflect our needs, and I sat at the table with City Hall officials.
Y yo, personalmente, me senté a la mesa con los oficiales de la alcaldía por muchas semanas este verano para asegurarme que tomen en cuenta todas nuestras necesidades.
I personally sat at the table with City Hall officials for many weeks this summer to make sure that our voices are heard and our needs are met.
Porque realmente, directamente son las necesidades de nosotros. Pagamos nuestros biles, nuestros impuestos y apoyamos a nuestras familias con nuestro trabajo.
This really is a law that comes directly from the needs of workers ourselves. We pay our bills and taxes and support our families with our work.
Estoy luchando por tener tiempo libre pagado para que pueda tomar un día cuando estoy enferma, cuando voy de vacaciones o quiero asistir a algún evento de mi hijo en la escuela.
I'm fighting to have paid time off so that I can take a day off when I'm sick, when I go on vacation, or I want to attend an event at my son's school.
Incluso esta misma semana trabajé con gripa. Hay eventos en la familia de que no he podido asistir por no cancelarle el trabajo a mis empleadores.
Just this week, I worked with the flu. There are family events that I have not been able to attend because I have not been able to take the day off.
Mi trabajo es pesado. Con el paso de los años hay desgaste físico, como alergias al polvo, quemaduras por el Clorox, daño en las rodillas y espalda.
It's difficult work, and I've suffered with different ailments with the passage of time, like dust allergies, burns from using Clorox, damaged and hurting knees and my backs because we have to clean on our knees and climb so many stairs.
He entregado mi vida a mis patrones, les cumplo todo lo que me piden y yo sola no estoy en esto, estamos las 16,000 trabajadoras del hogar.
I have done everything that my bosses have done or asked me to do, and I have suffered because of it. And I'm not alone. I am one of 16,000 workers who are in this situation.
Por eso, yo necesito un contrato por escrito en mi idioma para que mi trabajo sea profesionalizado, mis responsabilidades sean claras y tenga seguridad de mi trabajo.
For that reason, I need a written contract in my language so that my work is professionalized, my responsibilities are clear, and I have some security in my work.
Necesito descanso para que pueda comer en mi trabajo, algo que nunca he hecho.
I need breaks so that I can eat while I'm at work, something that I've never been able to do.
Necesito un final a la discriminación legal que he frecuentado.
There needs to be an end to the legalized discrimination that we've faced.
Necesito una garantía que cuando los patrones violan la ley hay una manera para hacerles responsables.
And I need a guarantee so that when employers violate the law, there's a way to hold them responsible.
Sabemos que Filadelfia es una ciudad grande, próspera, moderna y necesita de esta ley. Será un orgullo que Filadelfia sea un líder en el movimiento nacional para la dignidad, el respeto por las trabajadoras del hogar.
We know that Philadelphia is a big, modern, and prosperous city, and it needs this law. It would be a great source of pride for Philadelphia to be a national leader for the dignity and respect of domestic workers.
Agradezco a todos ustedes su apoyo, su tiempo y principalmente su voto en favor a la Carta de Derechos para hacer el cambio para las trabajadoras del hogar.
I thank you all for your support, your time, and most importantly, your vote to make this change possible, supporting Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights.
Thank you. And ma'am, please tell Maria I'll see her in the neighborhood, okay? All right?
Siempre.
Always.
Who would like to? Yeah. Oh, I know. Already is.
My neighbor.
Thank you.
Ms. Fields, please.
Yep. So good morning. My name is Vanessa Fields, and I am speaking on behalf of the Philadelphia chapter of A. Philip Randolph Institute, APRI. If the name Philip Randolph sounds familiar to you, it should. Randolph was a key organizer of the 1963 March on Washington. Inspired by this success, Randolph founded A. Philip Randolph Institute in 1965. APRI is an organization of Black trade unionists to fight for racial equality and economic justice. Thelma Clements is the president of the Philadelphia chapter, where I chair the Political Education Committee. APRI thanks Councilperson Keona Sanchez for her leadership in this legislation that addresses the work rights of domestic workers. In the 1960s, my maternal grandmother, Lucy Mae Stone, was the nanny, housekeeper, and cook for a family in Philadelphia. My grandmother often talked about not being paid, getting paid only a portion of what was owed her, or the father of the family getting fresh with her. That was in the 60s, but here we are in 2019, and domestic workers are articulating the same work issues and concerns that my grandmother complained about over 50 years ago. So members of the Law and Government Committee, do the right thing and support, endorse, vote favorably on this Bill of Rights for domestic workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Good morning. My name is Alana Bauer, and I'm here today to speak strongly in support of a Philadelphia Domestic Worker Bill of Rights. I employ a caregiver for my young child as well as a cleaner to help take care of my home. I believe that a Bill of Rights is needed in Philadelphia for the dignity of domestic workers who provide such important care to so many Philadelphians, and I believe this bill will benefit the city as a whole. A little over a year ago when my daughter was born, I had to decide how she would be taken care of when I returned to work. Exploring the options of daycare, nannies, caregivers was eye-opening and ultimately very rewarding. My partner and I settled on utilizing a nanny share and feel really fortunate to have a dedicated, hardworking, and loving caregiver who cares for our child 40 hours per week. I know that my child is happy, loved, and well taken care of while I'm at work. Part of figuring out who this caregiver would be was deciding what her job would look like. It was really important to us that our nanny would not only be adequately compensated for her work, but would have a comprehensive written contract, clear expectations, paid time off, and be treated with the utmost respect in her workplace. Figuring out how to do this is no easy task. It's hard enough to follow the steep learning curve of parenting, and harder still to figure out how to create a dignified workspace in our own home at the same time. But we waded in and did our best. The reason we feel so strongly about having a clear written contract is so that expectations and agreements are clear for everyone involved. It's much better for us, and it is much better for our nanny. Paid time off is a benefit I absolutely rely on to take care of my own health and wellness and to be able to take care of my home and family. I assume the same is true of everyone, and providing paid time off is crucial to creating a dignified and just workplace for my child's caregiver. We provide 10 days of paid time off to our child's nanny per year and unlimited unpaid leave. These basic benefits are crucial to every worker. I know how much I've relied on benefits from my own workplace, especially since having a child of my own, and the workers who make my work life possible deserve no less. But domestic workers should not have to rely on the good intentions and best efforts of their employers in order to have their work respected and their rights protected. We must make this the law in the city of Philadelphia in order that all domestic workers have access to these same rights and benefits. Thank you for your votes.
Thank you. Councilman Sanchez.
I just want to thank everyone who's worked with us, the employers in particular who stood up in defense of the workers that we're trying to protect. I know the Philadelphia Commission on Women and Vanessa, you in particular, have hosted several discussions, and we just appreciate the allies in this work and really look forward to the implementation of an education campaign and a process to lift all of these workers so that they can work with dignity. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Hold on a second. Councilwoman Gim.
A little over a year ago, Maria, I think you came into our office and told your story, and you told it to make change. And I think today is an incredible example of how many of us who believe that we need to see significant policy changes need to start by telling stories that change our understanding of how the world is experienced through many people. And I want to thank you. I want to thank your fellow sisters in arms. I want to thank the fact that we have a rising cohort of new union and a new expansive organization for labor rights and justice that represents women and families and the carekeeping of young people, and that it's at the forefront of what's right in our city. So thank you. It's an honor to see this journey come to where we are today, and I can't wait to celebrate with you later on.
Thank you. Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Sanchez, for her leadership on this issue, and also this coalition of people coming together for this important piece of legislation. And I'm reflecting on the words that Ms. Fields provided regarding A. Philip Randolph, and that the struggle continues. And when you think about the fact that being able to organize and having a decent ability to work with rights is what has led this country to where we are today. And so we need to continue that work to make sure everyone that works in this city and hopefully in this Commonwealth, in this country, has the dignity of work and being able to provide and work in a safe environment in a way that provides not only for themselves but also for their households. So thank you for you all being here today, and thank you for this important work and today's piece of legislation.
Thank you. Let me just finish up by saying I think it is really noteworthy there is no opposition here today to this bill. No opposition. And I think that's a testament certainly to the work that everybody did, led by Councilwoman Sanchez and the mayor's office and everybody. And it's certainly a testament to the hard work that all you workers do. You do every day, and then you've done in here to make sure that we do the right thing. And as I anticipate the vote here, I'm going to say congratulations on everything you do. Thank you. Being no one else here to testify, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go temporarily, if I don't lose my voice beforehand, recess the public hearing. We're going to go into a public meeting to address this bill. Those of you who are here for the census issue, hang in there for about 5 minutes. We're going to be right with you, okay? So again, we're going to recess the public hearing. We are now going into a public meeting. Everybody okay? He's the chair. Okay, all right. So we are now in a public meeting of the Committee on Law and Government. We still have a quorum. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that. There you go. I move this amendment has been circulated to all members of the Law and Government Committee. Mr. Chair, I move that Bill number 190607 be amended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. Once again, Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Bill number 190607, as amended, be voted out of this committee with a favorable recommendation, and that the rules of council be suspended so that this bill can have first reading at our next session of council.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Bill number 190607, as amended, is reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation and will be reported to the, for second reading our next session of council. Did I say that right? Order? First reading. Geez, we like to see happy people. Just for the record, so the chief clerk doesn't get upset, I misspoke. The bill will be reported for its first reading on the next session of council. Okay? Thank you. We still have a business before the committee. We have another resolution. So if people, yeah, I was going to say, we'll give you a minute, but then when you're leaving, please leave quietly, please. Okay, we're going to come back now to the hearing of the Committee on Law and Government. Again, if people are leaving, please do it quietly, please. Thank you. Ms. Marconi, will you please read the title of the resolution before us today?
Resolution 180316, resolution authorizing the Committee on Law and Government to hold hearings on the Dicennial 2020 Census.
Thank you. Before we call witnesses, Councilman Green, sponsor the resolution, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been some work that I've been working on for some period of time as we prepare for the 2020 Dicennial Census. It is an important issue for the city of Philadelphia because making sure that everyone that lives in the city of Philadelphia is counted and counted accurately, and then we have a complete count, is really important to how we move forward as a city in reference to the resources that we're entitled as a city. Too often over the years that has not occurred, and so the work that we are doing today in having this hearing to raise awareness, the work that the Philly Counts and the Keystone Counts and others and the United States Census Bureau are doing to raise awareness to make sure that everyone is counted is so important. During another administration, it was actually a nonprofit organization that was created to make sure that people in the city of Philadelphia were counted accurately. I looked at that information, I thought about doing something similar, but as opposed to reinventing the wheel, it made sense to partner with the county administration on this initiative to make sure that everyone in the city of Philadelphia is counted. And this body has taken steps to address that issue. Many people are familiar with the resolution that we passed previously, where the Commerce Secretary tried to add a citizenship question to the census, and this body adopted a resolution to oppose that effort, and we've been on the forefront of those things. And so it's very important that we have this conversation today, but not only today, but make sure as we lead into the end of this year and we go into 2020, that we are being very vigilant and getting the word out and making sure that we are all census champions and getting the word out about the census and the real impact it has in the city of Philadelphia, especially as we need the resources that we need as the biggest city in the nation with the highest level of poverty, to make sure we have the resources to improve the quality of life and address poverty in our city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for your leadership on this very important issue. Ms. Marconi, our first panel, please.
Stephanie Reed and Phil Lutz.
And as I stated before, all written testimony will be made part of the record. If you could summarize your statements, we'd appreciate that. Please, whoever would like to go first.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairmember Greenlee and members of the Law and Government Committee, thank you for having us. My name is Stephanie Reed, and I'm the Executive Director of Philly Counts 2020. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss the resolution and the hearings on the Dicennial 2020 Census, and Councilmember Green for sponsoring. The administration is taking members to ensure a complete and accurate count in the census in 2020. As you all are aware, the mayor created this office in January of 2019, and the office was funded through the city budget. And that has been the very early beginnings of our work. We've really focused our work so far on tackling four main challenges. One is was four main goals: to increase understanding about the importance of the census, to educate the public on how they can participate, to ensure responses from the public for a fair and accurate count, and to support filling census jobs. Along with the executive order that created our office, the mayor also created the Complete Count Committee, which has 19 working subcommittees, and to date, 18 of those have met, and the final one will meet later this week. The subcommittees and all of our work has been focusing on three key challenges, and you'll get to hear from other people today who will talk about their work around those challenges. The first is internet-focused processes, decreased funding, and low trust in government. We have really taken a community organizing approach and done a lot of grassroots empowerment to address these challenges. Each person that we count in Philadelphia is equal to about $2,100 a year in funding. So it's $21,000 over the 10 years that the census data is used. And if you have a family of 5 that you miss, you're talking about approximately $100,000 over the period that that census data is used that the city would miss. So every single person truly does count and really is important. And that's just for funding. The census data is also used for representation, which we know will have a huge impact on us moving forward. So on Constitution Day, September 17th, we worked with the Census Bureau. We launched the first of our large organizing days. It was our Census Champion program. And on that day, we originally had a goal to train 1,000 people in 3 languages. We actually trained almost 2,300 people in 8 languages all across the city, and we continue to do those trainings. Our next step is we'll be training about 500 of those people to be action leaders, and we're using ArcGIS mapping to be really strategic about who we're reaching out to. So we've looked at all of the census tracts and we've overlaid a neighborhood map so that we know which neighborhoods actually fall in the Census Bureau's hard to count category. And then what we've been doing is at every step along the way, mapping the people and the organizations that we've engaged with so that we can tell in a neighborhood that might be hard to count who we've engaged and if we need to be doing more events there so that we have more people who can be trusted messengers for us. So again, I thank you for the invitation to testify on this important topic, and I welcome any questions you might have.
We'll hear from both before. And everybody's got to be nice to Mr. Lutz because he knows where I live, so we have to be nice to him.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on a personal note, since you won't be with us next term, I just wanted to personally thank you for your friendship, being a good neighbor, and your lifetime of service to Philadelphia.
Well, we're still going to be neighbors, but okay.
And we'll go to some
Thank
more
you. And
Phillies
please,
games.
let the record reflect Councilman Jones, member of the committee, is present. Please, go ahead, Phil.
So thank you, Councilmember Green, for also inviting us here today and for your remarks. So just a reminder, as Stephanie mentioned, the Constitution Day, it was here in Philadelphia when our nation's founders signed the U.S. Constitution, which established the Dicennial Census. Our Constitution is unique because it puts the power of government in the hands of the people, and the census is a big part of that. The census is one of the few national activities the American public does together. It's the largest peacetime mobilization in our country, and it is the cornerstone of our democracy. Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution calls for an actual enumeration to apportion representatives among the states. Our founders recognized that in order to give the people who lived in the U.S. equal representation, they needed to know how many people lived here. Now, it's hard to imagine today that our nation's founders could envision the scope of a national census in the 21st century. It's important for everyone to remember that the data collected through the census impacts key decisions made by all levels of government, businesses, medical community, schools, nonprofit organizations, every factor of life. An accurate population count determines not only how many members each state has in the House of Representatives, but also how billions of federal dollars are distributed every year, funds that are distributed to states, cities, and even neighborhoods. Our goal during the 2020 census is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. In March of 2020, and just a few months from now, households will receive an invitation to respond to the 2020 census, and you can help educate and motivate your constituents to participate. Philly Counts and other organizations like Keystone Counts have already partnered with the 2020 census and are committed to helping us conduct an accurate census. Our team of partnership specialists are supporting Philly Counts and other outreach efforts in Philadelphia by conducting trainings and supplying materials. Now, next year, for the first time, the public will have 3 ways of responding to the census: online, over the phone, or through paper questionnaires. That means that everyone living in the U.S. can complete the 2020 census anywhere at any time, and even in multiple languages. If a person lacks internet connectivity, then they can connect from other locations, including public libraries, or they can call us toll-free to complete their census. It's important to remember that answers are protected and confidential. They cannot be shared with anyone, including law enforcement agencies. It's a massive undertaking conducted across the nation, but we are ready. Earlier this month, the Census Bureau completed its address canvassing operation to verify all residential addresses. There are now 2 temporary area census offices open in Philadelphia which will manage these field operations. We are actively recruiting temporary workers, and you can help us recruit by asking your constituents to apply for jobs at 2020census.gov/jobs. In a few months, we will begin our group quarters operation to count people in shelters, facilities, dorms, and transitory locations. In the spring and summer of 2020, census workers will personally visit any address that did not respond to the census and conduct an enumeration of the household at their location. I'm proud to report that we are on mission, we are on budget, and we are on schedule to complete the biggest, most efficient decennial census ever, and we are dedicated to ensuring the Census Bureau and the public are ready, willing, and able to accomplish the mission of the 2020 census. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you for the work you're doing. Councilman Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess some of the questions that I started my remarks regarding the citizenship question, and I want to get some perspective on what efforts that you're taking, both from, well, more so from the Philly Counts and possibly also from Keystone Counts regarding how do we address that issue and the concern that people may have about participating in the census.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that question. So I was actually just speaking with someone who left, and she was telling me there's a lot of articles that are going around right now that are talking about how, frankly, census data was used for the Japanese internment camps. And this is true. It's out there. The response to that would be Title 13 was created in response to this to protect people, but it is absolutely understandable that people don't trust that alone on its face. Philly Counts' approach to this is that we are working with community-based organizations that work in our immigrant communities that are the best trusted messengers with them. We're also government, and we know that. I do have staff here that are working with many of those subcommittees. We have 5 that are focusing on different parts of the immigrant community, and we have a very strong focus on language access. So when we did our Census Champion training program, we did 7 languages plus ASL, and everything was translated. I saw you have your pen on, which is nice, thank you. But I brought copies so you guys could see. If we did a training in Spanish, the pen's in Spanish, everything is in Spanish for them, so that there are people all over the city who can speak to why the census matters and why there's really more to lose. There's been a lot of research that's been done at the national level with different immigrant groups around the best way to talk about this. And the thing that comes up again and again in the research, it showed up with Asian Americans United for Justice and also NALEO, is that really talking about representation is really important when you're speaking with people in the immigrant community, and that if we don't participate in the census, then we potentially have less representation, which could open the door to having more elected officials who might push the boundaries on things. So we really are looking to the national organizations that have done extensive focus groups and trusting that information as well.
This has also been an issue at both the National League of Cities and other organizations. How are our peer cities doing in reference to getting information out regarding the census, and what have we learned from those steps, and what ideas can we use going forward?
So I can talk about both within Pennsylvania and across the country. The National League of Cities, as you know, created a group for people in my position, which has been hugely helpful, and I think that we've all come to really rely on each other. We have a great Google group. We share information and resources. I would say, with modesty, that the organization that we have built in Philadelphia is certainly one of the strongest in the country. The director of the Census Bureau stated that when he was here, and I would say regularly, each week I speak to approximately 3 other municipalities somewhere around the country who want to talk about what we're doing. One of the things that I find as I talk to other cities is that often what they're doing is relying too heavily on government as the trusted messenger. As we talk through, they'll say, how are you getting so many people to show up? How is it exploding like this? And we'll talk through what they're doing, and what I'll find out is every communication they're sending, every invitation they're sending is coming from government. And that's the problem. If the crux of the problem is already trust in government, and government is the invitation to participate in building out a network and a structure, then you're already starting from a place that's harder. And one of the things that we've done that I think has really helped us take off faster is that we really truly have relied on community-based organizations to be the inviter, to be the trusted messenger for us. So we play more of a behind-the-scenes role, providing the language and the materials and the structure that people can plug into. So I think we are very eager to provide as much support to other municipalities, especially in Pennsylvania, as we can. An undercount anywhere in Pennsylvania would be hurtful to us here in Philadelphia. One example of how we've done that is with the Philly Counts Action Fund. So we are also currently working with a couple of other counties outside of Philadelphia to see if we can help them set up funds similar to the one that we've created so that they can help get money out to their community-based organizations to do this work.
If I can add to that, from our experience, we find that the more there is talk in the community about the importance of the census by trusted people in the community, the more likely is that people are going to be receptive to participating. In the past, some very active and effective partners have actually been corner stores, barbershops, nail salons, places where people just have their normal conversations and learn about what current events are. So involving the business community is also has been important in the past.
Okay. And Mr. Lutz, those are the type of people that we're looking at, and Ms. Reed, you can also jump in regarding becoming census champions. Are we encouraging those people who are kind of trusted advisors in our communities become census champions to get the word out?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly who we're working with. And that was the beauty of our complete count committee. So I will say, when I talk to other cities, most cities have 5 subcommittees, 6 subcommittees. We have 19, which on one hand is a little crazy, but on the other hand has been a huge benefit to us because they get so specific. So we can use those complete count committees who already are leaders within each of these groups to help us engage more deeply.
And if I may add one more item, one area that has always been problematic for us in an accurate census is counting children 0 to 4. And for some reasons, parents sometimes just either leave kids off or because of custody arrangements, people aren't sure who should actually put the child on the form. So, working with daycare centers, with our schools, preschools, that's another important initiative. And then in the schools themselves, since we're asking about, trust of government and participation, the Census Bureau has a very robust census statistics in schools program that I believe is Philadelphia City Schools is looking at using where kids can learn about the census in the schools. It's a free curriculum. And as a result, they learn civic involvement and civic engagement, and they can be influencers in the household when it's time to participate in the census.
Yeah, one of the things I learned in, I think, attending one of the first complete count committee meetings was the underrepresentation of children. I just didn't even think about that, but I think that is an issue that I think parents are thinking that, or caregivers, that when I'm doing the census, I'm thinking of adults. And maybe young adults, but not thinking about young children 0 to 4. So that was something that was interesting to me, and I would not have thought about, because I think parents and caregivers and others are thinking about the people that could complete the form being an adult, and they're not counting the children who are also in the household, which is also part of the population count, and also helps to increase the numbers, and they need to be counted because we need to have resources that impact and benefit children as well.
In the city of, I believe it's city of Baltimore, their health department is actually getting involved in when parents, bring their kids in for immunization or for health, that they're actually going to give them a census message, remind folks that it's important to keep the health clinic open in the neighborhood, or whatever is the message that they want to give, because they might distrust the government, but they want medical services, so that's a good hook.
I feel like I should share that we're doing that department as well, and CHOP is also going to be working with us on that.
Okay. And just a follow-up, so are we working with our city health centers as well as I'm trying to remember the local medical group, which is, I think it's the Philadelphia Medical Society, in reference to getting the word out, right? In reference to getting the word out to their members who are pediatricians?
Yeah, so we're slowly working through all of those. So CHOP, Einstein, we're slowly working through the different health systems to talk to them.
Okay, good. And then two other quick questions. How are you getting the word out regarding that number of $2,100? That for every person not counted, the city of Philadelphia is losing $2,100. I mean, I think that's something either through some type of social media, some type of talking point. That's something that really needs to be resonated. That's money that we are not receiving to the city of Philadelphia that can be used for community development, block grant dollars, a whole host of federal dollars that impacts and improves the quality of life in the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah, I completely agree. So it's one of the focal points at the start of our Census Champion training so that people can be doing word of mouth. When we get to January of next year is when you'll start seeing more messaging related to participate in the census, both from the Census Bureau and from us, and that will be a highlight in it. We find that that number is incredibly persuasive with people. It's easy to wrap your head around. People can think of what would I do with $2,100, and then when you think about it over 10 years, what would I do with $21,000 is something people really understand. So we'll be doing a lot of word of mouth because I'm sure you're aware there'll be a presidential primary here next year. April 28th, everybody heard a little something about that. April 28th, which is in the middle of the time that we're going to be wanting to do most of our communication around the census, which is a huge challenge for us. It's something we're aware of, and it's part of why we've built our program out the way we have, because the cost of communicating through those traditional channels will be very expensive and also very difficult to get through the noise. So that's a big part of why we are also making sure that there's so many people trained to talk about this with friends and neighbors so that we have another way to get through some of that noise. But that will be a key message that we're highlighting.
And since you opened the door on that issue, if material was printed by an organization promoting the census and that material just happened to get to elected committee people throughout the city of Philadelphia, that they would pass out on, say, sometime in April when there's a presidential election, is that something that could be possible?
Absolutely, yes. And I would be really surprised if it wasn't happening anyway through other ways, to be honest. We hear, the good news is that we hear this is on the minds of everyone that we talk to, and that people are already thinking about where the places that they can integrate that. I know that there were C3 organizations that reached out to us asking, could we include a message about the census and the stuff for this year already, which are the people that we're working with, is the C3s.
And then I guess one last question. What can we do as elected officials in reference to getting the word out regarding the census? Because it has an impact on our ability to provide resources back to the constituents of the city.
Yeah, that's great. So there's a couple of things. First is helping share about our Action Leader Summit, which is coming on November 9th, because we have organizations coming in from national that are going to be able to talk to people about how to reach some of these communities that are most historically undercounted. The other thing that I would highlight is census jobs, because right now we really want to be supporting the Census Bureau effort to get people in the application pipeline for these jobs. And I think that's a really great place for council to be helpful, is hosting job fairs. And then next year, helping us push out these messages that are encouraging people to participate. We know that there's going to be a rapid response period that we're going to be starting on May 1st as soon as the campaigns pull out. And that's going to be another time when council is going to be particularly important, because you have these deep connections in the communities. So a large part of what we're doing right now is really focusing on mapping out who are the leaders, what are the resources. That way when we get to that rapid response, when we know here's where we have low response rates, we know who to reach out to. So just working with us on some of that mapping as well.
And also in March and April of 2020, as households are responding to the census, you'll be able to see some updated maps showing response rates down at the, I believe it'll be down to the census tract level. And so if you see areas in your community that aren't responding, we're going to have some strategies, and we're going to work with Philly Counts to create immediate awareness in those areas to help improve the response.
There's one last question. because you'll be able to complete the census online as well as through traditional means, what is going to be the initial contact that a constituent will receive from the government regarding the census?
So we can provide you a listed schedule. I believe it's March 12th. You'll be getting something in the mail, a notification in the mail. Each address has a unique code on it. We ask one person in the address to respond back for the entire address. So once we get a response back from that household, then we'll consider it completed. If people do not respond right away, then I think next week they'll get a reminder postcard or mailer, and then eventually people will get a paper questionnaire if they still don't respond. And certain areas will also get 2 questionnaires. One will be in English, one will be in Spanish.
If I could add to that, we do have copies now of what those draft communications will look like. And I think part of the thing that we need to be really aware of is that there's going to be a lot of mail coming in mailboxes from the presidential candidates. So we are going to be working really hard to make sure people know what they're looking for. We've scheduled 3 community action days, March 21st, March 28th, and April 4th, where we're going to have people out knocking on doors with flyers showing people here's what the mail will look like so people can watch for it and it doesn't accidentally get thrown away.
So you'll get the notice in the mail directing you to the website to complete the census. Then you get a follow-up notice some weeks later. If you still don't receive, if the Census Bureau does not receive information, then they'll follow up with the paper questionnaire, sometimes 2 paper questionnaires in English and Spanish. Okay.
Correct.
And you also have enumerators around. Okay. Thank
And
you,
then
Mr.
finally,
Chair.
it's not too late, so I think it's up to 5 mailings.
There's 5 mailers. Yep, 1 form.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair.
Councilman. Councilwoman Gim? Did you? Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Lutz, could you just talk a little bit about your history with the census? I think you've been with it for a little while.
Thomas Jefferson ran the first census in 1790. I was not quite there with him, but this is my 5th census.
Your 5th census.
Correct.
Pretty impressive. So, you know, I think you will have seen sort of the trajectory of the census over time. Could you compare this year's budget for your office compared to previous years? So maybe the last 2 censuses.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I can't really answer the budget questions because that involves a lot more operations than just what we do here in Philadelphia. It has to do with the national advertising campaign, the processing, the printing, and unfortunately, I'm not versed in some of that budget areas. I can say that in terms of what we're doing here in the 9-state region covered by the Philadelphia Regional Census Center, 8 states in the District of Columbia to be specific, we have enough budget to hire the number of people that we need. We already have 36 area census offices set up in that territory I just mentioned.
But you don't have information about how this year's budget compares to previous year's budget for this region?
First of all, it's not done necessarily by region, and second of all, because technology and changes are so different from decade to decade, that you really can't it's not fair to do a comparison because the differences are just too great. This time we're using handheld devices for all of our field staff, whereas before it was all paper copies of materials. In the previous census, each enumerator knocked on a few doors, got some questionnaires, then had to go to a fast food place to meet with our crew leader to turn things in.
But could you just clarify, because I'm not hearing it clearly, you had testified that you're on mission on budget, but I assume that would portend to know what the budget would be. So are you saying that you do know what the budget is, or you don't know what the budget is?
Oh, there's a budget allocation. For instance, the address canvassing work that we just completed here in the country was done under the budgeted allocation for that operation.
Okay. And
yes.
do you know what it was in 2000?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
You don't have that information?
Yeah, it's available probably on our website.
Okay. Because there's been a lot of concern about decreasing resources on the federal end, which requires the city, of course, as you know, to do increasing resources on our end. And then could you just state very clearly, because I think it needs to be repeated over and over and over again, what is the status of the citizenship question?
There is no citizenship question on the 2020 census.
Okay. And that affirmatively, and I think you testified to this, but there's no sharing of information with any other agencies, law enforcement agencies specifically, and that all answers are protected and confidential.
Correct. U.S. Code Title 13 requires us to, allows us to collect the information, but also requires us to keep your individual information, including even your address, confidential. And we may only release information in statistical totals that will not identify any individual address or person. Each of us, and I have with me my colleague Tamika Mitchell, who's actually one of our managers for the Philadelphia area, we all take an oath of secrecy for life.
Okay. And thank you. It sounded like, as you were talking a little bit, like vulnerable populations, which I think is really helpful to hear, the kids 0 to 4. It sounds like there's also vulnerable populations in which there are just multiple individuals within a household, whether or not they're familial, and I know that this applies very clearly to immigrant communities and families. Have you seen any lessons from other areas of regions that you cover that do it particularly well, or any insights that you can give about boosts, for example, in census numbers? I mean, I don't think it's about practice. I actually want to know about whether there's outcomes that you've seen happen in past census.
I can give you a perfect example. The town is Lakewood, New Jersey. In Lakewood, New Jersey, there's a large Latino community, large Black community, a large Hasidic Jewish community. And there's a large number of people that may not be documented. We work very closely with our partnership staff with the Complete Count Committee in that area. And while the census was going on, one of the religious leaders from the Hasidic Jewish community came to the Complete Count Committee and came to us and said, "We had been afraid to say we were here, but now we understand the importance of the census and the confidentiality. And we have some households you don't know about. Can we still get them counted?" If you look at the results of the 2010 census for New Jersey, you will find that Lakewood had one of the highest growth rates in the state of New Jersey. It probably was not the highest growth rate. It was probably the first time we did an accurate census because we had buy-in from important leaders from the community. So any way that we can replicate those types of success stories at the street level is important. We all know that there may be households that have more people in it, living in it, than the landlord knows about, or that zoning laws allow. And the more that we can stress the confidentiality message that the landlord can't find out, PHA cannot find out who's in the household from the census, the more, and the importance of participating in the census, the more likely it is that the person responding to the census will do so accurately and completely.
Yep, correct. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. For Ms. Reed, I think those are some of the questions. I think your statement was $2,100 a year is at stake. Is that correct? So it's like $800 million, and that would be $8 billion over the course of the 10 years that the census would cover. If you're going by the idea that maybe 414,000 Philadelphians are at risk of being undercounted in this census, is that correct?
Right. So I haven't done that calculation, but I think that sounds right as I do it in my head. And we got that number from a GW study.
Right. Yeah, so it's a huge amount of money. It's enormously at stake, and I think we heard some of these vulnerable populations. So, you know, affirmatively, like what amount of the budget is devoted to PR, like digital outreach, promotional types of things, not jobs, but sort of the kind of advertising, sign up,
So we only allocated, I think it was $10,000 to that because the Census Bureau has a budget for advertising. To be honest, that's what public funds from the governor's office was being asked for. And when we looked at what it cost to buy an ad, especially during the peak time that we would need to communicate, the budget we have is tiny compared to what it costs to buy media in the Philadelphia market. So we are really looking at earned media, and then we're looking at trying to door hanger so that people actually get door hangers close to the census time, and then really focusing on word of mouth communication to supplement the budget that the Census Bureau has to do their mass media. And I don't know what that budget is for the Philadelphia region. I'm sure we could get that for you, though.
From the national census area?
Right.
I mean, I think the concern is that there's been explicit statements made that the federal census budget might be declining. And so I'm trying to understand that if there is a decline on that end, whether the city has to step forward in the absence of that.
So I can address some of that. So if you're asking about money that maybe existed in 2010 that doesn't exist now, there's one really clear pot of money that I can talk about. So in 2010, there was a fund of money, and it was actually in 2010 funded through Recovery Act money, and it was $554,000 for the Philadelphia region, and that money was used to make mini grants to community-based organizations. We realized early on that that money did not exist. It wasn't even reduced, it just does not exist, which is a huge challenge for our community-based organizations that frankly we're relying on. That's a huge part of our plan, is that we're going to provide materials, the community-based organizations are going to do the communication with the people that they work with on a daily basis. So we worked with the Philanthropy Network Greater Philadelphia to establish the Philly Counts Action Fund. And to date, we have, I don't have the total number with me, but I think we've raised, it's just over $700,000. We're on our third grant cycle now. I should actually say they are, because all of the granting is being done through the Philanthropy Network. And I think that we are at 38 organizations that have received mini grants so far around census work. The key point of the way that this fund was created was to get money in and out really quickly so community-based organizations would have it and it wouldn't be sitting. So they're reviewing the applicants it's about every 6 weeks they review it and get money out. And we're continuing to have people commit to that fund. So that's a really clear place that I agree with you. We've been concerned about the resources as well, and that's one place that we've tried to replace a fund that didn't exist.
Yeah. And then what is your budget compared to the 2010 budget? So you have $975 for FY20. Do you know what it was for the 2010?
I don't, and part of why I don't is because I've seen conflicting information. But I can tell you they had 2 dedicated staff people, and I have 10. So that's one thing I can tell you for sure. The 2 people that I know about were through the mayor's office, and it's not clear to me even if they had a separate budget, but I know that there was money that was raised that got used, and someone did show us a separate budget that we had never seen, but it's not something that I got through official channels, so I really don't know.
No, that's okay. And how much are the mini grants for the community orgs?
They range from, I think the smallest one has been $3,000 up to $25,000. And we can get you a list of the people who have received
And are
grants.
they responsible for, I assume, so basically you have jobs that you can post, so you'll hire, do training, et cetera. But the community orgs are also doing their own job hiring that they can use with the mini grant money. And then, so when we talk about language access and kind of the broad-based information that goes out for language access, this is a little bit about why I was asking about digital advertising or promotional videos or something that can reach different languages and actually can reach a lot of people on, through radio. We have some, a number of different Spanish-speaking radio stations, and other types of things. Is there a budget for that from us, or that has to come through the Bureau, the U.S. Bureau?
There is money through the Bureau. We also, that's actually what the $10,000 was for, was to do like small buys in some of these like
Super
very
small buys. We were all
Yeah.
through an election. We
I
know
know.
we know what buys are costing.
I know, and that's part of the challenge. But I will say, so some of that will happen through the community-based organizations because we've seen some applications, and also I'll give you an example. So our African and Caribbean subcommittee is talking about doing a YouTube channel with different videos related to the census and how they're going to get it out. Our communications director, who's here with us today, Irene, has also been working with different ethnic medias to try to talk about how are we honing in on specific messages that make the most sense. When we did the Census Champion trainings the day before, there was a briefing for press that was hosted by Aldea, and we're looking at how we duplicate that with other different sectors of the media, I would say. So it is really challenging, but what we're trying to do is approach it through the subcommittees, which are engaging the community-based organizations, and then they can apply for money as well through the Action Fund, and then we provide the support to make sure that the message stays cohesive and that everybody's also being accurate, which is a concern.
And then the, I want to emphasize, like, first of all, thank you to Councilman Green for doing this, because I actually think this is a really important effort, and we need to think about it a lot more. I will firmly say that I don't think 10,000 or even, 50,000 or 100,000 is not enough for a digital ad buy, considering the fact that there's so much disinformation out there about the census, and especially to combat the issues around protection of immigrants and other people who feel very marginalized and vulnerable by the federal government right now. And so, this is just a reality that we're in. It's not meant to impugn like any particular agency. It's just a reality that we're in right now. And so much like disinformation that's like being promoted. Fully support the idea of a YouTube channel. It won't matter if like it gets distributed through like people's personal networks. The idea of it is to reach like a broad audience, and for that you do need some amount of paid information campaigns and advertising. But I guess that's something that we can continue to discuss, and as it is. But there's $8 billion over 10 years on the line, $800 million a year, and to me that is worth the potential loss of that is worth the cost that's invested in, and our goal is to actually be like Lakewood, New Jersey, and to see significant growth in our population. The last question I had is, do you have some thoughts about how you're reaching some of our homeless community on any given night? We have 6,000 people in the city of Philadelphia who seek shelter. It doesn't mean that's every night, but on any happenstance night, you're looking at that many people who are out there. So what are your plans on reaching out to them?
So we've already had one meeting with the Census Bureau about this to begin discussing, and we'll be working closely with the Office of Homeless Services on this. So the way that they do it is very similar to the way that we do the point in time count, which the city is quite good at. So we will be drawing on the wisdom of the people who do this on a yearly basis. We also have already had, I know at least one, but I feel like maybe one other organization that's applied for money related to supporting the count of the homeless community, SELF, which is connected to the Urban Affairs Coalition. So that's another way that we're trying to do it, is engage those community-based organizations, make sure they have the resources available to keep the lights on a little longer, to be part of that effort. But I really think that the best thing for us to do is to be drawing on the wisdom from the folks who do it every year.
And just for clarity, as a city, you're a member of the mayor's team, is that right? You're a city official. Your city.
I'm an MDO.
You're an MDO. Thank you.
Yep.
So are you allowed to interface with other systems like tax and revenue, and
Yes.
are you allowed to cross-check
So we
who
have,
files versus who
For the census, you mean?
Yeah,
No.
probably not, right?
Yeah.
You're a completely separate
But
system.
what I will say is, for the people who don't respond to the census, part of how they fill in that data is administrative records.
Right.
Which could include something similar to that, not that specifically, but that is, they do use records like that to help fill in some of the data, but not ours.
Right, and when you say for people who haven't, it's for people, you're talking about people who filled it out in 2010, and you're kind of reviewing them in 2020 when you say who, whether you know who is filling out the census or not. Is that based on 2010 data? Is that based on something different?
It's based on the address file. So there's a couple of phases.
Okay.
The first is the self-response period where everyone's filling it out themselves. And then late April, you switch into non-response follow-up. And that's when the Census Bureau will start looking at, there's an address file that we were working with them on, and Phil referred to that in his testimony. They will be looking at the addresses that have responded based on the address file. And then any ones that haven't responded, those will be the ones that fall in that.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I'm asking very basic questions, but I appreciate the learning opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez.
Thank you. I wanted to ask the Census Bureau, you talked about an address verification process. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, so the foundation of a census is what we call the master address file, which is a compilation of every residential address in the United States. It also includes non-housing units such as shelters, dormitories, facilities like that, prisons. And so that's actually, each address is given a unique identifier. So when you get your notification in March of 2020 that it's time for you to participate in the census, there's actually going to be a code on your flyer that you can, when you go online, you'll put that code in so we know it's coming from your address.
So how real time is that? I have a very transient community, so how real time?
Well, houses don't move. So and that's an important point. We actually take the census as a snapshot as of April 1st of the year ending in 0. So even if someone doesn't respond from an address, and now it's May or June, and we're knocking on the door, and maybe the household is now vacant because the people who moved away, we will knock on the neighbor's door and ask questions like, well, who was there on April 1st, and get information that way, or if someone new has moved in, to ask them about the people that were living there on April 1st. In terms of the address list itself, that is always being built. We continue to get updates from the U.S. Postal Service as new addresses come online. Councilman Greenlee and I live in the Brewerytown area, which is growing like crazy. So as new addresses come online, we get that from the Postal Service. There's also the opportunity for the City of Philadelphia is participating in the new construction program, which is another check on our address list to get any addresses that came online maybe in April of 2020, after the mailers already went out. Maybe you didn't get a mailer because it's brand new. We'll still go back a little later in the spring and summer and compile the information there.
Okay, so one of the things we don't do well is this process of address verification, which is that's why I'm asking you, what are all the different data sets and pools that we're using, because we know where people live, we know whether they're poor, and we can never connect them, right? So I just fear that I want to make sure we're not getting caught up in that, and that there are more real-time data sets being used. Can you describe to me what your phone campaign is going to be?
With
the phone campaign for the census. You talked about, whether it's in person, you're going to particular locations where they're hard to reach. What does the Census Bureau's phone campaign look like?
Well, very simply, we have telephone centers around the country. So when you get your notification to respond to the census, if you don't want to go online and put in your information, you can call a toll-free number and answer the information, respond to the census over the phone, and those centers will be supported in 13 different languages.
So you're waiting for people to call you. So there is no campaign where the Census Bureau is calling people?
No.
Is there a reason why not?
Because we can't necessarily match up the address with the phone numbers, and again, it's a household-based response. So as long as we get someone back from the household, then we can count the people that are in that address.
Yeah, I'm very concerned around this phone situation. Having spent the last 6 or 7 months knocking on doors, the response was not good. In terms of the connectivity with people at the doors, and really in this, having participated in 3 different census processes over the last 30 years, because of all the fear factor, I'm looking at phone as a mechanism, right? And so looking at people, your expectation is that people will voluntarily call as opposed to us trying to reach people wherever they are. So Steph, how do we close this gap between, because I really do think phone, as I told you, I'm going to start a campaign. If you call them, they don't have to come knock on your door. That's my campaign for folks. Councilwoman Kim, I'm going to tell people, if you call them, they won't knock on your door. How do we close that gap?
Yeah, I love your campaign. And once you said it, we were all like, oh yeah, that's right, of course. I think there's a few things that we're doing. I think meeting people where they are is exactly the answer. So we get this question a lot, how on earth did you train that many people in one day? And I said, well, because we went to where people were, right? We didn't say, we're gonna have 3 things and everybody come to us. We had 71 things where people already are, and we got them there. And that's just the start for us. If we can start like that and we continue to build that out, then I think we're sharing that information through trusted messengers where people are. Another way that I think we're trying to think about where all of the points where we can get people. I recently had a meeting with AARP, and we are going to work with them to do teletown halls, right, where they reverse call into their members. And I think it starts to get at some of those things that you're talking about. So I don't think there's one answer. I think we look at each of these neighborhoods that we've identified as having a historically undercounted community, and we think about how do we meet this community where they are. It's complex, it's really hard, but we're here for it, and I think we do that by partnering with people like you who've been so fantastic, who show up.
Yeah, what kind of advocacy can we do with our congressional delegation about getting the census to do more things than it's currently programmed? What kind of advocacy that we need to do?
So I think it's hard.
We had a lot of more
money
money before than we've ever. I mean, let's just.
The
I know we're
money
dancing
is-
around it. We're not making, to Councilwoman Gimm's point, we're not making the kind of investment, and we're not going to have the kind of return. So what could we be advocating for to our congressional delegation to get the Census Bureau to do locally?
I mean, if there was a special appropriation, I mean, that's a great thing to advocate for. Also, like, the thing that we've been trying to be smart about is also saying to our members of Congress and all the members we meet with, like, do you have those communication resources? Like, can you do reverse calls? So I think also asking them to tap their resources and their connections, because they've run campaigns, they've won, they know how to reach the people in all of these communities as well. So the easy, obvious answer is an appropriation, but I think the secondary answer is help us talk to the people we need to talk to. And so far, I've found our delegation to be incredibly supportive and responsive.
So how much are we, I know that you've been aggressive about raising private money, so how much is the City of Philadelphia investing in this?
So the city has, my budget for my office is $975,000. I have here with me, if I can add up in my head really quickly, Action Fund. So our first round of grantees for the Action Fund was $59,100. Oh wait, and then, so actually the 2 disbursements that we've made were $238,080. And we just closed our 3rd round, and the total of those applicants was $194,071. So that's where we are on the grantees applying on the other side.
So in our general operating allocation towards this, how much are we doing?
$975,000 through the city.
Okay, so you're also fundraising,
Yes, so that was the other piece. But that fundraising is not coming to us at all.
Okay.
That, in fact, it never even comes into the city. There's a fund that is housed by the Philanthropy Network, and the community-based organizations apply to them. We just didn't have the capacity, to be honest with you, to run something that quick through all the systems. But so far, the goal, honestly, is to fund any organization that applies as long as they meet the threshold. So they've got to be a 501c3. They've got to be doing work related to the census that actually works for the census. And if someone submits something that doesn't work, then we're working with them to help them figure it out. So there was an organization that applied in the last round that one of the things they said is they were going to count people. And we said, you can't count people. And so the Philanthropy Network said, we're happy to fund you because you're going to be working with a community that's important to engage, but only if you go back and circle back with Philly Counts and understand how this is going to work, so what you propose is real. So, so far there have only been 3 organizations that weren't funded. 2 of them were outside of Philadelphia, and 1 of them didn't have a C3. So our goal really is to be able, it's small amounts of money, to be able to get that to all the organizations that apply.
Yeah, and I want to thank Councilman Green for bringing this to our attention. I'm chairing the Committee on Poverty. We leave $200 million of federal money on the table because we don't connect with people.
Yeah.
And so all of us are feeling incredibly uncomfortable, and there's no reflection on you and your team. You're doing what you can. I just want to reaffirm the Councilwoman's statement. We're not doing enough, and the stakes are too high.
I honestly appreciate the support and the concern. What I will say is, I have been so happily surprised by how much the people we talk to care about this. It's just a matter of having enough hours in the day to keep up with all the stuff that's coming at us. So I do appreciate it.
I think one of the things we need to talk about in council is how do we make sure that every single department that interfaces with the public does this in a very intentional way, and that they don't feel like, just the census counts folks is their responsibility. $2,100 per head should be motivation, and to the extent that they can relate that back to their budgets and that we send a really strong message is huge. I'm very uncomfortable of where we are, and I'm also pleasantly pleased at people understanding that, right? It's about political empowerment. Do you want to see the city of Philadelphia lose a congressional seat? I mean, the stakes are incredibly high, and so to the extent that you're building an infrastructure that we can build on and put some resources behind, we're gonna need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gibb?
Yes, and just briefly to also build off the councilwoman's point, this is no reflection on your particular agency, but it's just a recognition that the opportunity is enormous, and so for you to be able to make it clear that we do need some more help, it's not to say that people aren't doing enough, it's just we need more, and your role in doing that can help leverage other departments and other entities to maybe come to the table, but it's very clear that we've, a number of us have just run major citywide campaigns. We know how much it costs to be able to reach a sizable portion of the city on a relatively limited budget, and yours is not even like a blip on the radar. And again, it's not to say about intent, it's just a recognition that this is one of the largest cities in the country. We've got a lot of people at stake, and we have the most amount of need that we've ever had in a city that has seen diverging populations around inequality and growing poverty. That's really serious for us, and this census can help us make some serious inroads in hurdling some of that. And doing so in really amazing and supportive ways and rebuild a sense of trust. So it is worth it. It is not to reflect on any other part of anybody that they're not, they individually are not doing enough, but we have an opportunity that we can't leave behind. And for whatever, situation that we're in, this is a point in time count. And so we all need to be on board, and you're leveraging some of that and saying it's not enough. It's great. It's a start. I'm really happy. It's more than we've had. It's still not enough is a reasonable thing to be able to say and to ask people to do more. So thank you. And we're going to try and keep talking to figure it out.
Thank you. And if I may, I just also want to say we have a municipal subcommittee, and I have been really it's been really nice to see how supportive other city departments have been. And I'll give you an example. The Free Library, They worked with the University of the Arts to do a civic engagement sprint with some of their students, and we participated in it. It was a 3-day process where UArt students were designing, used human-centered design to come up with ideas for how they could be engaging people through the libraries around the census. So I actually brought with me, because this was one of the things that they created, and it's so cool. One of the groups created this little flyer that they would hand out, and on the front it says "My Block Counts," but when you open it up, it's also got a little window poster. And I think it's great because they're thinking about this early enough that there's still time to figure out how do we refine it and implement some of these things. And I've been really surprised at how supportive a lot of the city departments have been. And we have, as of now, we have done 3 trainings for 311 phone reps so that they have all the census champion information when they answer the phones. So we are working our way through all these city departments, but I think any additional support and helping people understand how critical this is everyone's budget.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you for all the work you continue to do there. Ms. Marconi, I think we have one more panel.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Joe Lynn and Michael Pierce.
Is there anyone else here? This is our final panel. Anyone else here wants to say anything? Okay. All right. These will be our last 2 here. We have your written testimony. We're going to start quickly bumping up against the next hearing. So if you could summarize your statements and then any questions, okay? Please identify yourself and proceed.
Great. Good morning, council members. My name is Joe Lynn, and I'm here representing Keystone Counts, which is a statewide coalition of nonprofits that's united for a fair and accurate 2020 census. And I'm here today to share the statewide perspective of the census in Pennsylvania because, as Stephanie stated, an undercount in any area of the state would hurt Philadelphia also. And I also wanted to share how we as a coalition are collaborating with the Philly Counts office and really supplementing each other's effort to making sure that every Philadelphian gets counted. So Keystone Counts, we are currently at 90 member organizations across the state. We are all 501c3s. There's statewide advocacy groups. There's also grassroots service providers and community-based organizations. So this coalition is actually a project of Pennsylvania Voice. Pennsylvania Voice, we have a statewide network of 35 partners that works towards a more just, inclusive, and reflective democracy. And so this partnership was thinking about the census as early as 2017, and the reason for that is because when we're thinking about a just, inclusive, and reflective democracy, really every single person has to count, and so the census is a huge cornerstone of that. I think it has been talked about earlier in the last panel, the funding and representation piece that the census brings to Pennsylvania and to Philadelphia. So to put the funding piece in context, the census drives allocation of $880 billion that goes from the federal level to states. So of that $880 billion, $39 billion comes to Pennsylvania. And to put that into context, that $39 billion is 35% of the state government budget. So if there was an undercount, that is money that the state government would not be able to make up, which would then in turn hurt municipalities and communities. I think the number before that was floated is that money is equivalent to about $2,100 per head if you were just to look at the top 16 federal spending programs, Medicaid, Medicare, CHIP, TANF, Section 8, et cetera. But if you were to actually look at the top 55 federal spending programs, that's actually over $3,000 per head. So it really drives home the fact that every single person has to count. And then to put the representation piece in context, Pennsylvania is on track to lose 1 representative in the US House in this cycle. And Pennsylvania has been losing representatives in previous census cycles. We are on track to lose 1 representative this time around, but if we have an undercount, we could actually lose more than 1 representative in the US House, which then also affects the number of electoral college votes that Pennsylvania has. And then of course, census data also drives how state legislative and local political maps are drawn. So and if any community is undercounted, it really means that they're not being represented politically. So when we talk about this funding and representation piece, there are communities that have been historically undercounted, and it's really becomes an equity issue, right? So if certain communities are historically undercounted, they're historically missing out on this funding and representation that comes based on census. And so we as a coalition are focused especially on those historically undercounted communities, communities of color, immigrants, and children. And so when we look to tackle the census issue, we wanted to come up with a comprehensive statewide strategy in order to make a difference. And so we looked at the areas of the state that had undercounts back in 2010, and we looked at the areas of the state where historically undercounted populations were growing, so where communities of color, immigrants, and children were growing. Based on all of this, we were able to determine that out of the 67 counties in Pennsylvania, 24 counties were most in need of a focused education and outreach effort because those counties were at the highest risk of having an undercount. And no surprise, Philadelphia is at the top of that list of 24 counties with a total of 414,754 households at risk of not being counted because they're at risk of not participating in the census. So just to put that in context, in the 24 counties, we know that there's 1.2 million households that are at risk of not participating. So Philadelphia literally has 1/3 of the households across the state that are at risk of not participating. However, despite the situation here in Philadelphia, I would have to say that I'm thankful to the Philly Counts office that I have been able to work with them ever since they started up at the very beginning of this year. So Philadelphia, relative to the other areas of the state, is actually pretty well taken care of. Like Stephanie's been able to, and her team have built this remarkable infrastructure that allows people to plug in a way that I do think that the census count in Philadelphia is going to turn out well for all of us. So together, between my coalition and Stephanie's Philly Counts office, we are really addressing the unique challenges of the 2020 census. Some of this she has mentioned before. One, the Census Bureau's reliance on internet responses raises concerns for the folks that, let's say, don't have internet access or don't have the digital literacy to navigate an online form, or are simply afraid of putting their information in an online format, right? So both of our teams are really trying to address that. Second, we're trying to address the distrust of government piece. And Councilmember Green, you mentioned earlier with the failed attempt to add the citizenship question onto the census. I mean, that's really really symbolic of the fear and distrust in communities, especially of the federal government. And so we are trying to overcome that also. And then the third thing we're trying to overcome is Census Bureau has a smaller field capacity relative to previous cycles. So as an example, in 2010, there were 19 area census offices here in Pennsylvania. Now in 2020, there's only 9 of those area census officers. And we also know that the hiring of address canvassers and enumerators, the folks that go knocking on doors, is going to be less than in previous cycles. And so both the Keystone Counts Coalition and the Philly Counts Office, we're really filling this field capacity gap by utilizing grassroots strategies. Stephanie mentioned trusted messengers, right? So both her office and the Keystone Counts Coalition has been incredibly effective at getting trusted messengers to the table. And so we're providing them with the resources and the tools and the talking points and the social media toolkits and all of that in order to help them raise awareness in their own communities. And we really know from research that it takes a person hearing about something 7 to 12 times before they feel comfortable taking an action. So my hope is that between the Census Bureau's work, between the Philly Counts Office's work, and then the Keystone Counts Coalition's work, between all of us, we're able to get to 7 to 12 times, but it really is going to count on everyone talking about the census and getting engaged and spreading the word. And so we at Keystone Counts are specifically gearing up and helping nonprofits build out their civic engagement capacity. And our vision is really that the census is the beginning. Like maybe nonprofits build out their civic engagement capacity, mobilize their communities for the census for the first time, but then in the future are able to mobilize their communities for other things as well. And so we really look forward to nonprofits building out their capacity in this way, but we also look forward to the continued conversation about the census so that the census remains in the public consciousness and people are really hearing about the census 7 to 12 times in order to get them where they're participating. And so I thank Council for dedicating the time today to hear about this issue because it's really going to help get us there.
Mr. Pierce?
Absolutely. Hello, I'm Michael Pierce, and I'm here representing Generations Online, a nonprofit organization dedicated to bridging the digital divide for elders. As Philadelphia citizens, national leaders in digital training, and stakeholders in the Aging Network, Generations Online recognized early on that an online census geared to ease things for the majority of the population would actually be a burden and a deterrent for the nearly 60,000 older, low-income Philadelphians who lack internet access, skills, and confidence. And given that you already have my written testimony on file and hearing and heeding your call for brevity, I'd just like to highlight a couple of paragraphs in this, if I may. We created a tool to overcome those barriers, and we've connected with partners to help us deliver it. Generations Online has helped more than 110,000 older adults, seniors, overcome their fears and get online. Beginning in 2000, with support from the Mayor of Philadelphia and the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, we pioneered on-screen trainings to overcome the barriers of access, skill, and intimidation that prevent the neediest from adopting internet technology. After 19 years of experience, we recognized the hurdles an online government filing would present, and that the people we target, low-income elderly, would be most affected by a primarily online submission. The elderly, particularly the inner-city poor, already fall into the categories of those least likely to be counted. They often have a mistrust in government. They have privacy and cybersecurity concerns, physical handicaps, and a lack of reliable internet access, and the lack of confidence in their skills to perform tasks online. In Philadelphia, 217,027 folks are 65 and over, not counting any birthdays today. 27% are not online, according to the Gold Standard Pew study in 2019, which means 58,597 are older and not online. The number's probably higher when you take into account low education and low income. So here's what we've done and how we expect our efforts will help lead to a full count. We are building a new on-screen tutorial to guide a timid senior step by step through the specific skills required to complete the online census form. With large type, simple English instructions on every screen, they will practice checking boxes, finding a drop-down answer, typing and correcting on a device, etc. This will be both a web-based interactive site so that no institution has to download anything, and we will also register as an app so that families can give their older relatives and friends. It's clearly a safe practice tool, not the form itself, and we've been guided all along by the wonderful staff at Philly Counts. We're going to create pop-up census training sessions at senior centers, public libraries, and senior-friendly venues all across the city. Through the initiation of Councilman Jones' office, we will train 30 block captains working through Block Captains United Association. They will serve as coaches in two key target areas of West Philadelphia because they are trusted voices in the low-income communities. Seniors value privacy and do not want anyone else to fill out or see their information. It's also the law. Our census training tool will enable them to complete the form themselves through a link to the real site after completing a safe, simplified, guided practice on each task. Block captains and coaches will be trained to explain the difference and to distance themselves when the seniors are beginning to file their real form, a Title 13 requirement. We're grateful for this opportunity to share our work and are open to any thoughts the council members may have for a training center in their district. where there are older adults who fear technology. We will rely on partners for deployment and continue to seek funding to make this tool as widely available as possible. Our goal will be to have a pop-up sip and swipe census training center all over the city and provide our training website and app to any organization or caregiver that wants it for free throughout the month of March. We're proud to play a role in this critical effort. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your service.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Just have a few quick questions. I was not aware of some of the work that Generations Online were doing. As a former board president for the Center in the Park, which I would say is one of the premier senior centers in the city. Yes. I see one of our former board members also here in the audience, but also the vice chair of the Council Committee on Aging. This is a population I've been concerned about in reference to the census. Are, as my father would say, seasoned citizens who may not have access to technology or some concerns with technology. So the work that you're doing, in fact, you're working with Philly Counts is very important. Also, as I transition to Ms. Lynn and your work with the Keystone Counts Coalition, I get your emails, so thank you for sending that information out. But also, I wear a different hat, not only as a member of City Council, but also as the first vice president for the Pennsylvania Municipal League. And so if I remember correctly, at our league summit, which I was not able to attend this year, but in previous, I think last year, Lynn Newman was there on behalf of the census, starting to talk about the census and getting the word out. Some of the information you provided in reference to the lack of centers coming up with the 2020 census as compared to 2010, and she was involved in the 2010 census. That started my concern regarding that. So what has been the outreach that Keystone Counts has made in reference to Pennsylvania Municipal League or other organs like that, where you have elected officials who represent various cities, towns, villages across the Commonwealth?
So most of our work in terms of recruiting organizations to join the coalition is really targeted towards community-based, more grassroots organizations. With that said, I also do present and raise awareness across more grass-top organizations like the Municipal League. Last Friday, I was just at the NAACP State Convention in Harrisburg, and Lynn and I actually spoke in the same segment, both trying to raise awareness about the census.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to Pennsylvania Municipal League. Rick Shuttler is the executive director. Our deputy executive director, John Brenner, is a former mayor of York, Pennsylvania. And so they have a very strong network through the league, through various cities all around the Commonwealth. And I think is another way of getting the word out. I think we need to use every arrow in our quiver in reference to getting the information out now, so that way we can make sure that every person, not just in the city of Philadelphia, but the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is counted accurately. And give me a perspective also on the types of organizations who are part of your membership.
So it really is a spectrum. So some of them are like more statewide advocacy organizations like Pennsylvania Partnerships for Children, for example. So all the way from statewide advocacy organizations to like a local grassroots organization.
Okay, and then I'll close with this question. Are there, from your work you're currently doing, and this is both for you, Ms. Lynn, and you, Mr. Pierce, are there additional steps that can be taken? I know funding is always a concern and challenge, and we could always use more resources, but are there other steps that can be taken, other advocacy groups or organizations that you've not been able to connect with, other ways that we can help move the needle to help make sure that everyone's counted in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so I think it's all about getting folks to hear about the census 7 to 12 times. So really, I don't think any type of outreach education effort would be like too much. I think all of it needs to happen in order to make sure that folks are getting those multiple times hearing about it. I think in terms of organizations that haven't joined the coalition, but that should, I think it's one of those issues where it's like, I don't know what I don't know. So I'm more than happy to take recommendations in terms of what organizations need to be at the table. I think your recommendation of the Pennsylvania Municipal League was a great one, and I will definitely follow up on that.
And as I mentioned, our focus is primarily on senior citizens, and so and one of the obstacles that we always encounter is finding a friendly rapport that the people can trust. So we're always trying to identify the places in the neighborhoods in Philadelphia where seniors are already gathering and have people they already trust, so that we can train those people to just be our arms and legs and voices to get the training done.
And just one follow-up question. Is there a comparable organization to the work you're doing here in Philadelphia, Mr. Pierce, on a Commonwealth level? Because I would venture that not only is this an issue for low income or those elderly Philadelphians that don't have access to technology, but I would say in rural parts of the Commonwealth, some of the inner ring suburban cities in the Commonwealth, I'm thinking of Coatesville or Chester or Norristown or Erie or Reading or Pottstown or Alquippa or Penn Hills. I'm just thinking of different cities around the Commonwealth would have similar challenges and concerns like older, low-income Philadelphians.
Yeah, we are a national organization, so we're working not only statewide but nationwide. We've been having doing a lot of work in rural areas where the rural population, at least senior population, is even less connected to the internet. So while we've been working with Councilman Jones, with particularly in Philadelphia and with Philly Counts, we're also this app that we're building, this tool that we're building, will be available nationwide.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking it may be a good idea to reach out to the Wolf administration, to the Secretary of Aging, to talk about this issue and talk about the opportunities to participate in the census and using that agency, which is a statewide agency, to help get the word out regarding the census, especially to those Pennsylvanians who are in areas that may not have access to technology because they're in a rural area or an urban area that has some resource challenges.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. If there's anyone else that would like to testify on this resolution, resolution number 180316?
Yes.
Okay, please come up. And we don't have but so much time because there is a 1 o'clock hearing. So, If you could just state your name and your organization for the stenographer.
Good afternoon. My name is Charito Morales, and my organization is Providence Center in north side of the city of Philadelphia, Fair Hill area.
Okay.
Well, I'm here because it's important for us to be counted. We have a large of the Latino community that came over here after the disaster of Irma and Maria. We have a lot of brothers and sisters that came from Venezuela, Dominican Republic, and they do never vote here. They don't know what is a census. They do not know, what to do and how it's going to be counted. A lot of them are really scared. So what are we doing in the North Philadelphia area that we already start talking to each individual in their own language, and they're getting to understand. They feel confident that we are going to do a tremendous job here at the city of Philadelphia. They're getting to trust us, the community outreach specialist. We are walking and talking with Pedro Rodriguez. He's right behind me, and he's providing us a lot of information, resources ahead of time, because it takes time. I overheard what you just said about going to different areas, rural areas in the state of Pennsylvania, which we also has a lot of Latino community in there. And of course, they don't have access to a computer and they never used a computer before. And I think it's important that we all get together and start outreaching these areas and using the resources that we have. And if it's possible, we can outreach the areas too. Everybody has to be counted. But we also have to make sure that everybody knows how important it is and what is the census and what type of resources we are going to bring to the community if they get counted. So we're going to need all these fundings. We're going to need a lot of help and resources to provide this information to the Latino community. Not only Latino community, every community has come over here in the last 3 years now.
Okay. Ms. Reed, if you could come back to the table real quick. Thank you for your testimony. In fact, your testimony and comments triggered another question. Because you've been working with Mr. Rodriguez, I know your organization working with the Philly Counts Committee, but Ms. Reed, I guess my question is, what about some of the newer immigrants who have come to the city of Philadelphia? Are you working with the mayor's office on African and Caribbean affairs? There are other organizations that I'm thinking about, like CMAC in South Philadelphia, organizations like Intercultural Services based in West Philadelphia that have a wide range and diaspora of dialects that they do interpretation services. Are those organizations you're already having some outreach with?
They are. We have an immigrant and LEP, Limited English Proficiency Subcommittee, that is chaired by Will Gonzalez, who is the head of SEBA.
Will, SEBA.
And all of those groups have been part of the meetings because we recognize that that's a significant part of the work that we need to do.
Right. Yeah, because there have been newer immigrant groups that have been coming to the city of Philadelphia, especially within the past 7 or less years, that do not necessarily have an established community organization that represents them. And there's been other organizations who have kind of been filling that void. But I think that's very important because we don't want to miss any gaps. And to the extent that we can reach out to every organization, even if they don't have an established community organization that represents them, there may be others that can provide that assistance.
Yeah, and our hope is that, I think that's a really important point that you make, that all groups don't have an organization that represents them. I really think the multi-pronged approach is important for that reason, because if we're not catching people through an organization like that, perhaps I know we had a meeting this past week with DBHIDS, for example, right? Maybe we'll catch people through some of that work. I think what is helpful is if you know of groups that might not be represented like that, if there's someone we can connect with, that's really helpful. We certainly want any leads to people we can talk to, and we're trying to just make sure that there's so many tentacles out there. There's always going to be some people that slip through. I think we have to know that. What we want to do is minimize that. Another way that we catch people, that I think will catch some people, is through the school district. So our Children and Youth Subcommittee is chaired by Dr. Height. And one of the things that we are trying to work out with them right now is there's a parent-teacher conference period that will happen in April. And we're trying to work out with them that we train the teachers to have an elevator conversation during parent-teacher conferences with all the parents about the census, and that then there's computers available at the school so they can ask parents, before you leave the school, please go complete the census. So these are examples of ways we're trying to layer and layer and layer so that people who might slip through the cracks in other places get caught through large structures that we have.
And I want to add to that, and I'm sorry. In Providence Center, I speak 5 languages. In the Providence Center, we speak 8 different languages because we know that it's important to the people in our community to serve in their own language. So we have different organizations like APM, SEBA, we have Concilio, Congreso, that we have a lot of multiple languages. I am a legal and a medical interpreter. We are certified, and we are ready for the census this year. So we do have a large community who speak different languages. And so we're really aware that all these people are coming over here from Liberia, Sierra Leone. So I speak lingo, which is important. It's really difficult to communicate with these individuals. So we are ready for these individuals in our communities, especially if people will come from Italy. I speak Italy. I also speak Quechua and Arawak, which is indigenous, which we have a lot of indigenous coming to our language. So I think pretty much in language base, we are kind of ready, and if it's something that we cannot interpret or translate in their own language, we are going to have all the individuals that also speak other languages besides the one that we speak at the Providence Center.
Yeah, one last point is that I know from the Complete Count Committee, Reverend Waller is a member of that committee. I know there's other religious leaders on the Complete Count Committee. However, in some of these communities that we're talking about, trying to tap into some of the religious leaders in those those communities may also be helpful, because they may not be an established community organization, but they're more likely than not is an established religious institution that can be tapped into as a way of getting information out regarding the census, especially when you look at some of the very diverse communities in the city of Philadelphia coming from the Latin, African, European diaspora. So there's some opportunities, and as well as Asian diaspora as well.
Yeah, completely agree. Some of our largest census champion trainings were ones that were related to a church or some faith institution. So Pastor Waller's, I think we had like 300 people there. And I do think that's a really important piece of the equation. One of the things we've done very recently with some of our subcommittees, and our interfaith is one of them, we've been having trouble doing like a citywide group. And I think it's because the work is so place-based. So we just had a meeting this week with some of the subcommittees. It was interfaith, African American, aging, to talk about how do we start to pivot into more geographical so that we're pulling all of those organizations that are supporting a community together to put a collective plan in place.
I'm just trying, as you're talking, maybe brainstorm about other resource opportunities. So the city's Philadelphia More Beautiful committee with the block captains, you know, they do an annual spring cleanup. They just have, right now, as we speak, having their annual block captains awards program. So I think using every resource that we have, and that's another resource that's very, very grassroots. A number of blocks throughout the city have block captains and junior block captains. We talked earlier about committee people. So we even have, police advisory committees in the school district. We have the SACs, student advisory committees, and homeless school associations. So we should try to reach out to every type of organization that's grassroots, just to get the information to them so they can spread the word, so we don't have 414,000 people not counted in the city of Philadelphia, and we lose $2,100 per person.
Yep.
Okay.
Completely agree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no one else here to testify on Resolution 180-16, seeing none, this hearing of Law and Government Committee will be recessed to the call of the chair. Thank you.